right, I always say "Build Me a Buttercup" is a tricky one to listen to after a tough Wisconsin loss, but there we go. It's the brand of the program. Before we start, probably the most depressing jump around that I can remember in recent Wisconsin history, in modern Wisconsin history, modern being Alvarez, since it started in, was that 97 or 98? That was a real. There were more Northwestern players jumping around than Wisconsin students. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll get to that. Scary Alvarez podcast is here. I'm a Wine Island enjoyer, Sherry Wine destroyer, Jake's grandpa. Big touchdown for Jake yesterday. Not
Yeah,
surprising.
you
And
did.
Cindy's plus one when she'll have me. And welcoming on Tyler and Jake, the Wisco Fanatics. Good to have you guys here. You guys have some great content that y'all do that I'll let you guys kind of go into in a second before we start to dissect where the I feel like the Wisconsin football program right now is on a metal slab, and we're going to be dissecting the season, not the program, but the season, dissecting where the season is and why there is some reason for hope amongst the carnage. But Tyler and Jake, why don't you guys just sort of take turns and introduce yourselves and talk about your show, and we'll go from there.
Go ahead, brother.
All right. So I'm Tyler. I'm the host of the Wisco Fanatics show. We talk about the Badgers football and basketball, the Bucks and the Brewers on Wednesdays, and then on Friday nights we talk about the Packers. All of our shows are live, so people can join the comments section and have their voices heard and read by us and interact with us while we do the shows. We do our analysis from a more optimistic and positive perspective, and we're really trying to change the narrative that optimistic can't be realistic, because that's a lot of things that, when people are negative, especially on social media, they say, well, I'm not pessimistic, I'm just realistic. Yeah. And the reality of it is you can be optimistic and realistic at the same time, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, so I'm Jake. I'm the other half. I really just call myself the comic relief. I come in, I say a couple numbers, I say a couple jokes, and then you guys go on your merry way. For me, when we decided to go a little bit more optimistic mindset, the thing that really always stuck with me is when people go at college players, specifically Wisconsin, and that is going to be a big topic today. So if you can't tell, I'm a little spicy about that. So I'm gonna let Scary take the floor here, and we're gonna get ready to go.
Yeah, I appreciate that. By the way, I like your name, Jake. That's a strong, powerful name for a number of reasons. How has that been living with that name?
Well, people always make the State Farm joke, so I just always show them my shorts, and it's never khakis.
Oh, okay. Whoa! All right, going deep.
It's always basketball athletic shorts.
Okay, didn't know where that was going, but it's all good. whatever works for you, buddy. Well, that's good stuff. And so we're gonna tackle a couple of more than a couple, a few questions today. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is all on the heels of a incredibly disappointing loss at home to the Northwestern Wildcats. Disappointing not just for the score or for the flow of the game, disappointing for frankly, the effort that the team had in this game. That doesn't mean every single kid. You know, I love these kids, and I'm optimistic like you guys are. I mean, I don't, not to the point where I think I don't say what I mean, but I come at it from a very optimistic perspective. And I know we've seen this, especially early in games across much of this season, but I will say there was something, and I thought that I talked to Ryan Herrings on Locked On Badgers recently, and we thought that the last game, the Indiana Hoosiers game, that was the rock bottom. We both were pretty established that there was no point in the 2023 season where this team was going to come out with less fire than that against an inferior opponent. Well, here we go. 1 week later, that was as dead and as disinterested as I can remember a Wisconsin football team in any particular game, literally since I took over the program in 1990. We were 1-10 that first season, and there was not a single game in that entire season where there was less effort and less fire than I saw this past Saturday. That is a scathing indictment of the state of this program right now. What are your, and this seems dark. And I know we're gonna try and find the positives from this because there are some. Oh, yeah. But Tyler, Jake, what are your initial? I know what your thoughts are, but please tell my audience where you are on this with that game.
Jake, why don't you go first and talk about the Hunter Wohler comment, because I think that's one of the most important things.
So I really agree with what Hunter Wohler said. If you haven't seen it, if you haven't watched that interview, please take a couple of minutes and go watch that. Hunter Wohler shows some real leadership. Another, tack on the board for him as he works his way towards an NFL contract this next spring. But he said that they're soft. They're playing soft. And that's 100% what it was. And this is something that I always talk about, right? We went live yesterday after the Packers loss, to kind of give some perspective on that. And one thing that I always talk about that I've loved my entire life is like, if you're going to lose, at least give me heart, at least give me effort, show that you want to win, show that you want to be there. And those exact words are something, paraphrasing, that came out of Luke Fickell's mouth, where he said, we're going to find out who wants to be here. And they always say that you're as strong as the weakest link. So if you have one guy that's, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but, if you shag an ass, I mean, yeah, that's just going to go on to another guy and another guy, right? But if you have everybody giving 100% effort, that's obviously going to go through the entire team. You're going to put out a better product on the field. So for me, it's just about effort. It's about heart. It's about will. And, this season hasn't gone the way that we wanted to, but there's a pride factor in it, right? You didn't put all that work in the offseason just to not make a bowl game. I mean, and I've seen your tweets, Scary, and man, that Axe game got real uninteresting real quick. A couple weeks ago, that was looking like a pretty good game, right? But
it's going to be uninteresting in the sense of the national, college football audience giving a shit about it, kind of like the Nebraska game. I mentioned that NBC is hyping this Nebraska-Wisconsin game like it's USC Notre Dame in 2004. But it's fine. I mean, they got to sell their ads. They got to sell their ads. But in a very different way. We'll get to this later, and I'll let you keep going here. But Wisconsin, Minnesota is going to take in a very unusual bowl eligibility factor for both teams. So I think you'll probably get some good efforts in that game. But let's turn it back to you and keep flowing here.
Well, I'm just gonna say, man, if we don't see more effort this next week, we're gonna have to start putting some people on the chopping block. And I mean that in like the best way possible, but it is what it is. We got to be honest about stuff, right? And if you got players that are not giving everything, when these coaches, I know they're staying up late and they're giving everything that they have. I mean, Fickell doesn't seem like a guy that half-asses anything. So if you're not going to give 100% effort, I think that he's going to – there's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. But that remains to be seen. I'm going to let Tyler give his thoughts here.
So, and this is another thing that was kind of said by Hunter Wohler and echoed by others, is that they're going to find out people's give a shit factor.
Yep.
And, Mike, who does our Badgers content with us, said that he wouldn't be surprised to see 8 to 10 guys transfer out at the end of the season. And it wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, you talk about the enormous shifts in system and execution on offense and defense, both of them massively changing from the quote unquote the Wisconsin way. It was a necessary thing for these changes to be made, and I think we'll probably talk a little bit more about that with some of the things that people are saying about the coaching staff. But it really comes down to, and I'm glad that Hunter Wohler said this, and it actually kind of like reinvigorated how I feel about the last 2 games of the season.
Yeah. And you alluded to the coaching staff, and let's go there, because look, I want to be 100% abundantly clear about the fact that the coaching staff and the head coach especially, they are ultimately responsible for the product that is on the field, from effort to the way they play to the discipline, every aspect. So I'm gonna say that at the outset, that nothing I'm going to say is to excuse Luke Fickell for those responsibilities.
Right.
But the butt's coming. Luke Fickell, I believe, is an incredibly talented and disciplined football coach who I think probably in hindsight might have approached things a little bit differently in year one. And what I mean by that is he came in and wanted, and I think someone said like trying to be the fun uncle. Like he wanted to come in, not to say there's not discipline, not to say he didn't yell at people, not to say he didn't run sprints in practice. I'm talking about Wisconsin way. Let's take this thing that was and just make it a little bit better using these changes. And I understand why he approached it that way. You have a certain amount of talent on this team. You cannot have an entire team transfer in. He's got years from his recruits being meaningful. he has to make the best of what he's doing. But I think he, and maybe justifiably so, totally underestimated. I'm not sure I can say how down the program was, but just how big a change from where that team was left at the end of 2022 from a talent, scheme, all of those things to what he would need to run the things he needs to run, including Phil Longo's offense and Tressel's defense. He is flabbergasted at the gulf between what he thought he had and what he actually has. From you can talk about effort, but I think just simply from a talent scheme perspective too. So Fickle is finding out, like a lot of us right now, just how down this program was. Doesn't excuse him. The results are his. The wins and losses he has to own. You can argue a coach who doesn't get his players ready for a game, whatever the reason is, it's still his fault. But no Wisconsin fan, and certainly no one on this podcast is more surprised about what's happening to Luke Fickell. Thoughts on that?
I would agree with that. And it's a scenario where, if we're talking about it from the fan base perspective, you have to know that the change was necessary. And this goes even further, extending to a comment that I've continued seeing all week, is that we should have hired Jim Leonhard for the job. And honestly, as the season has gone on, I've seen it as more necessary to have not given Jim Leonhard the job, because we needed to get so far away what has been done in the past. It's honestly, I think if you want to call it dominance of Badgers football over the last 30 years, if you want to call it dominance, I would call it solidness, has been because more of the players than anything else. Like, obviously, when the Barry Alvarez era started, they were a one-win team. And then, we've had great players come through, even in recent memory, just having like game-wrecking pass rushers. And now we're in a scenario where, how many recruits have you heard that were like, oh my God, I'm so excited to go to Wisconsin? That needed to change. Yeah. That needed to change.
Yeah.
And it drastically changed over 8 months from January to September, with how we viewed recruiting and the Luke Fickell bat signal and players being excited to come here and excited to have Wisconsin in their top fives, and seeing the amount of visits that players are having.
That all makes sense.
So necessary.
Recruiting is, and that's another thing that, you see the results on the field this season. We could talk about whatever, whoever's at fault for that or whatever. But the reality is, I saw someone, more than one person, oh no, Fick's going to lose all these recruits. I don't think so. I think I don't think a single, I don't want to say not one person, but the bulk of the recruits that they're recruiting for their system, they're seeing what's happening here. And these kids are smart enough to know, given the depth of conversations I'm sure they've had, whether it was with Longo, Fickell himself, with Tressel, that what is on that field is not them. They're being told, hold on a second. When you all get up to Madison, whether you play right away or whether you play a little later, you're going to be the reason this is different. I'm not saying I'm not saying what has happened this season is an advantage for recruiting. It's not an advantage. But I don't think it's damaging, because the whole thing you're not selling. You all are going to get up to Wisconsin and think you're just going to just fit right into that system that's churning great. Well, they're not bashing the current Badgers or the recent past. Those coaches are selling a different vision of the program, and that vision can be sold just as well, perhaps even better, with what has happened this season. This is what we are not going to be. We want fighters and warriors. Listen to Hunter Wohler. We want Hunter Wohlers in this program. We don't have enough of them. We want kids who are going to go up and get that ball, who are going to run the correct route, who are going to be able to go downfield, things like that. So, where I'm not saying it's, I want to be very clear. I'm not glad it's happened this way. I do not think recruiting is being impacted whatsoever by this season. Not whatsoever.
No, I 100% agree. You could definitely make you're the missing piece speech very, very well right now, especially at the wide receiver and defensive line position is where I think it's the biggest need. I mean, offensive line hasn't been great, but defensive line, in a 3-3-5, you need guys that are going to be space eaters, going to take up 2 blocks, going to fight through a double team occasionally. And then for linebackers, you need guys that can fly around, cover the pass, and aren't afraid to stick their nose in there. And quite frankly, the linebacker play has been very inconsistent. Jordan Turner will have a good game, and Jogmeta will have a bad game. If Jogmeta gets benched, Jake Chaney comes in, and he has a good game. Then he has a bad game next week, and it's like, guys, if two of you just figure it out, we'll be okay. You know, and you know, I know it's easier said than done, but you know, when they're learning an entirely new system. I mean, we ran the 3-4, you know, successfully, very, very successfully, dominant. I would call that dominance.
Yes,
the defense was very well, and we had some good linebackers in that system as well. But going to a 3-3-5 is a completely different animal. I do think 3-3-5 is better fit for the college game now, with how much people like to spread stuff out. If you can have linebackers that can fly around the field and cover basically extra safeties, I mean, God, you can really destroy some offenses. And I do like what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball. They just need a quarterback who has a big, strong arm who can also run and make that decision quickly. Boom, 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 boom. Which Braden Locke was doing okay at. I think Tanner Mordecai holds the ball a little bit too long. But he has the athletic and the wheels, right? But he doesn't make the decisions quick enough. So it's like, if we can combine them two, I think we'd have a pretty good player, honestly.
Different circuit. Yeah, those are all good points. And you know, with the defense, and it isn't my goal right now to call in any individual player out. These players know who they are. No one feels worse about the situation than the players, even the ones who are not quote unquote buying in. I know they still work hard. I mean, it's, you know, this isn't the Attack the Kids show, but they don't have the dudes. So we were concerned at the start of the season that they wouldn't have the high-end playmakers on the defense that we've had maybe in past years to be as good as we can be. And that was borne out. No one has stepped up and very few people have stepped up to be better than we thought they'd be. But one commonality to all of Jim Leonard's defenses, this isn't an indictment on Tressel's coaching, it's where the kids are right now, it was effort. There wasn't going to be a game where they gave up. I'm not saying they didn't have games where they gave up too many points. They did. But you had this fight, and one commonality to every good championship level college football defense is tackling. This is one of the poorest tackling defenses that Wisconsin has had probably since I took over. And I don't mean the worst defense talent-wise, because it's not, but the worst defense as far as wrapping up. Wrapping up, you're not going to ever be good in the Big Ten. If you don't wrap up, they don't wrap up. Simple as that. I'm not saying they're not running away from a tackle. I'm not saying that, but just it's the fundamentals. This has to be incredibly frustrating. And I don't know if these kids are they finish and they go watch the tape, because I'm sure that, you know, Tressel's going to play that tape for them as he has all season. And it's got to be the same goddamn thing every week in that meeting where they're watching this and they're watching the missed tackles, or you're not in the gap where you should be, or there's a blown assignment and things like that. And you know, I understand it comes back to coaching, but ultimately the coaches are not on the field playing that game. They're not the ones making the reads if there's an audible call at the line. They're not the ones whiffing on tackles or not being there in coverage. You can only blame Tressel so much for this. And then people are like, fire Tressel, bring Jim Leonard back. Jim Leonard is not coming back to the Wisconsin Badgers ever. No. Ever.
Nope.
Unless there's a scenario where the Fickle project is a complete failure, Chris McIntosh has gone somewhere else, and there's a new Badger guy. So I mean, never say never. He's going to be the defensive coordinator at Northwestern. This Chris Leonard thing at Northwestern is intriguing. We can talk about that later. But anyway, that's where I am, guys. I'm not trying to step on you, but that's just incredibly frustrating for a program that has been grounded in sound, efficient tackle sound defense.
The tackling for me is a thing, whether it's the Badgers or the Packers. It's one of those fundamentals. Like, it's the thing that above all else on defense, it correlates to winning. Like, it's 100% apparent with the Packers. The games where they tackle the best, the defense performs the best. It's not anything that should shock anybody. However, looking at it, PFF has credited the Badgers with 85 missed tackles in 10 games.
That's it. That seems low.
In my estimates, what I've seen versus what PFF actually credits, they're usually light. But even if they're accurate, that's still 8.5 missed tackles per game.
Unbelievable.
That's way too many.
That's unbelievable. By the way, before we move on, Tyler, the Packers, I feel like they're almost like inverse images of each other. The Packers are an incredibly talented defense with terrible coaching. And the Badgers, I'm not a Joe Barry guy. I'm not going to lie. I don't think he's never shown that he can get it done at the NFL level. He's never been average. He's never had an average defense. It's unbelievable. That's another story. The Badgers are lighter on the talent, and I think the coaching. It's I hate to say it's less of a coaching thing, more of they just don't have the horses to do some of the stuff they want to do. I don't think the Packers are that way, but they both have been unsuccessful for different reasons. So it's been frustrating either way.
I will touch on that real quick. I do agree with your point about, they're kind of mirror images of each other. Whereas the thing that makes me mad about Barry, and I never really talk about this, but when we get into short yardage situations, can we please put more than 2 defensive linemen on the field? For the love of freaking God, dude. He fixed the corners playing off, right? Because he used to do that all the time. Now he's bringing them up.
Yep.
One problem at a time he's fixing, it seems like, but it's like, dude, you could put 4 D linemen on the field at one time. That is like a possibility. You could run that. You can put 5 if you really want to. I mean, they don't limit you how many 300-pounders you can have on the field at one time. But that's the one thing that always like really gets me when we're in a 3rd and 1 and there's 2 D linemen and Kenny's in a 3 technique and I'm like, well, they're going to double him. What do you think they're going to do? It's like, but
Joe Barry. We're divulging for the Pack, but really quick, when Joe Barry said the quiet part out loud last season and said he was asking the players on his defense what they wanted to do, that was the point you need to be fired the next day. That is not what a defensive coordinator, even in the NFL, that's not what a defensive it's not a public opinion survey. You're not a census taker. Yeah. You are a leader, and you are a X and O's chess guy. And Joe Barry, he might be great friends with LaFleur, but that seems to be the best thing on his resume right now, is that he's friends with LaFleur. Sorry, guys missing tackles. It's not because they're not talented enough. It's because they're not being coached well. So let's move on for the Packers. I'm sorry. I know it's that's another show. We could do a Packers frustration show, but I will say I'm kind of like Jordan Love. I'll leave it at that. I think he's got some skills. Anyway, let me move this forward a little bit. The expectations for the rest, the season's only two games left and then potentially a 3rd bowl game. What are your expectations? I guess it's not a prediction per se. You don't have to tell me who you think is going to win the games necessarily, but your expectations of how the program will go forward after this very tumultuous week and how that's going to look.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm really looking to see how people respond to Hunter Wohler's comments. The fact that there was reports that the media had asked for 12 players to do media availability and only 6 said yes, that's telling to me. And what I would say is if you feel that in any way that Hunter Wohler's comments are about you, it's about you. And regardless of how much, like if Hunter Wohler's comments offended you on a 1 out of a 1 to 10 or a 10 out of a 10 to 10, no matter how much, it's the introspection and it's like, what can I do at the individual level to affect the team in the best way? And that's what I'm going to be looking for from any of these players is who steps up in response and has a great game, and after the game is willing to acknowledge the accountability of, hey, I wasn't doing as much as I could have been, and Hunter Wohler's comments snapped me out of it. And that's why I played this well today.
Yeah, I think that's well said, and I think it's fair to say that, although not sure how fine a point they're going to put on it, these last 2 to 3 games, frankly, are an addition for anyone on this team who wants meaningful playing time next season. I really believe it's going to be that. If Fickell doesn't see certain guys who are on his list, so to speak, stepping up these last few games, I think they're going to be done. I really do. Whether it's transfer out, whether it's B3, not being the 2 deep. But again, Fickell is not a transfer portal guy, but that transfer portal is going to be a thick boat this offseason. I believe we're going to get 15 to 20 guys in at least.
Yep.
At least.
I said 10 plus in our Badger chat, dude.
10 plus. We had 10 plus last year. If nothing else, it's going to be for attrition because I think we're going to lose. I think we're losing 10 to 15 guys easy this year. And that's going to weed out a lot of problems, I think.
Not that it super affects the Badgers, but you look at 2 teams, one of them being Texas A&M, and the other one being Mississippi State, who have both fired their head coaches. Those are 2 teams who are usually pretty active in the transfer portal and just in recruiting in general. That's
Mhm.
2 more teams that the Badgers can jump up. I think they had like the 24th ranked transfer class this year.
Yeah.
I mean, why would the Badgers not want to be in that top 10 transfer classes in the country?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at 2022 compared to 2023, they were in like the 60s. And then this year they're in like the mid 20s. So they want to keep it going up.
It's going to be tricky, though. I will say I took Fickle at his word when he says he doesn't want to build teams in the transfer portal. I believe him. Last year's class was necessary due to many reasons. This year's class, for different reasons, is going to have to be bigger, I think, in the transfer portal due to some things happening with this team that we just went over that he wasn't expecting in terms of the talent and buy-in. What I do think, I do hope that at the primary positions, 25, 26, 27, that Wisconsin will get, by then his own recruits will be in meaningful positions and things like that. That this will not be, I take him at his word when he says he's not going to be one of those transfer portal teams, but I'll be goddamned if I don't think he needs to this year, because he does.
I would use the word
Pass rusher.
fill.
He needs an impact pass rusher.
Yeah.
He needs an impact pass.
Use the word
plain and simple.
fill instead of the word build. That's how I would use it. You know, he's going to want to build his team and then fill in what he needs to, is how I would look at it.
That is a semantically pure way of saying it, and I think in an ideal world, I think that's exactly the way. No, I'm not trying to be dismissive. I mean, that's the way we would want it.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, all adults here, it's at least for 2024. I think it's a little bit more of a problem than just filling positions. I think you want to try and get guys with multiple years of eligibility remaining if you can. Maybe not for quarterback, but for some of those other positions. To get a guy you can keep in the program. Or otherwise, you're getting seniors, and then you have freshmen trying to fill them next year and stuff. And it's just it's going to be interesting. And Jake and Tyler, while we're on the subject of the portal, I didn't think this until recently, but now I firmly believe they're going to get a QB in the portal this year. You guys have any thoughts on that?
A QB?
Maybe. Yeah. To me, it's going to depend on what the offseason looks like for Nick Evers. Because we were talking earlier about the scheme changes and needing a guy who can sling it and a guy who has wheels. Nick Evers has all of the physical tools that you would want. But for him, it's the football IQ side that needs to progress. And if Nick Evers can do that, I think Nick Evers could be your 2024 starting quarterback.
Agreed. But it's a little bit disheartening at this point. This is no knock on Evers. I wouldn't be able to learn this playbook. This is a complicated playbook. It's much harder than people think it is.
Yeah.
But as skilled as he is, or LeCroux, or a kid we've already seen a few games of, every one of those guys has the potential to be a college football starter in the Big Ten. I believe that. But I feel like with the 2024 schedule, as it is, and it is a bear, it is a monster of a schedule for Wisconsin. And this year not going the way we thought it would go for Coach Fickle, there is more. No one's going to say this out loud in the staff, but there is more pressure on that team to be better next year, knowing that if they have a good year, it could be a 7-win team. I'm just telling you, that's how crazy it is. So I'm predicting a transfer portal quarterback.
That is the first I've heard of that. I do not hate the idea because I always let things play out. I've learned to take a step back and digest all the information before I freak out. But man, that would be insane, actually. Thinking about all the quarterbacks we've recruited, brought in. I mean, you just mentioned a few of them. Can't think of the kid's name. Long hair.
Matoyer?
Yeah.
Yep.
He is.
Matoyer, by the way, I believe is going to be a Wisconsin football starting quarterback within 2 years. He's that good.
I can see that.
He is already an all-time great recruiter. I'm going to say that right now.
He's great. Love the kid. So this is no knock on Matoyer. And look, Matoyer, I've never interviewed him or his dad. They're certainly an interesting interview. He believes he's going to be the starting quarterback of the Wisconsin Badgers next season. I believe that in between his ears right now, he believes that. And I believe he's an early enrollee, who I think he's going to come up here from the Woodlands and I would love to be wrong. If that kid comes in and shows out in spring ball, that may just put the transfer quarterback. But ultimately, the kid's never played a college snap, no matter how good he plays in camp. So I just think that it's and let the chips fall where they may. I mean, it's a simple case of he brought Evers and Locke in within a few weeks of each other, when everyone was like, "Oh, Evers is clearly going to be the starting quarterback for the Badgers." Then he brings in Mordecai. So I think more is better for that quarterback room.
Yeah.
And if you don't like your chances, then it's been wonderful having you here. Shake your hand and you transfer out. That's okay. I think that's the way this staff is looking at it.
Yeah.
And you bring up Matoyer, and honestly, that's the mindset I'd want him to have. I wouldn't want him to be coming in with a mindset of, all right, I'm here to be the backup.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
Cole Recru is the same way. We interviewed him last January. He's the same way. Like he wants to come in and he wants to do everything he possibly can to be the guy. So that's the mindset I would want a quarterback to have coming in.
Well, these guys are also young too, in the sense of even Locke, for example.
Yep.
Where if there were a 22-year-old quarterback taking the snaps next year for Wisconsin, it's not like any one of them would necessarily be like, "Oh my God, my career is ruined." These are going to be sophomores and freshmen and true freshmen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are a really, really good college football program, generally freshmen and sophomores and true freshmen are not your starting quarterbacks.
Right.
And that's just where we are. So anyway, that's just a thought. Wisconsin, Nebraska. What are you guys expecting to see this week?
To be blatantly honest with you, I'm expecting a shit show. It's going to be it's two first-year head coaches going against each other, which is interesting. Seeing Luke Fickell versus Matt Rule, and whose team wants it more is really what it's coming down to for me. And that's why I go back to the Hunter Wohler comments: is who takes it to heart and who comes and outperforms what they've done over the last few weeks, especially over the last 2 weeks. Because even after the Ohio State game, I think we felt like, hey, we're moving in the right direction, even though we lost this game.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that's when the season turned. I really do. I think somewhere late in the third quarter of the Ohio State game is where people fell off. They decided this was when that game was over. They closed it out. And by the way, real quick contrast. I'm not a like Cornhusker message board stalker or anything, but at least the projection that the coach is giving and the players, it seems like, despite the fact they're on a losing streak right now, that team is in a better place. There's more buy-in. They don't seem as far from the system Rule wants right now than Wisconsin seems from the system that Fickell wants. That doesn't mean that Wisconsin can't be better next year. It doesn't mean Wisconsin can't beat them this Saturday. I'm just saying, like, that seems a little more of a stable situation. You don't have people in the locker room calling each other players out, which, in fact, I like that. That's fine. But you hate to see it. You hate to have that happen. So I do think that Nebraska is going to roll in on Saturday in a better mental place than the Badgers. That doesn't mean Wisconsin can't beat them. Maybe they get their shit together this week. Maybe we do find who the leaders are. Maybe they do finally get to these kids, because Wisconsin certainly has the talent to beat Nebraska by 3 touchdowns. They have the talent to do it. They simply do.
Right.
Nebraska's not great, but this game does give me some pause, certainly. Jake, what do you think about that?
The thing that Wisconsin has to do, I said this last year about the Packers when they were struggling. They have to go back to having fun. Because at the end of the day, these kids are student athletes, right? But this is a form of entertainment. Okay? You're going out there playing a game. Now, I'm not saying you don't work hard, you don't do the weight training. Like, I understand all that stuff is hard work, but this is something that you love, right? So it should be easy to go out there and give effort. They need to go back to having fun, honestly. And I know that sounds like really, really stupid to say, but when you're having fun and doing something that you love, you'll be shocked at how good you are at it. You'll be shocked at how much easier and flowing the game will come to you. Just go back to having fun. Stop thinking so much. Stop pressing so much. Stop thinking that the end of the world is coming if you lose this game, because it's not. You're playing a football game at Camp Randall, which is pretty freaking cool, by the way. And you're wearing an awesome helmet with a cool-looking W on the side of it. Go out there and just hit some people, throw some touchdown passes, knock some people out. Who cares, man? Let's just play football. Hey,
Jake, I love it. I think those are all great things. Start doing that at kickoff, not like halfway through the second quarter. Is what I would say. All right, guys. Well, we're moving along in time here. We can go a long time. We do a word association game often on the show. I know that's a lot of fun. I know this is just your favorite listen every time I have an episode. But I'm going to say a name, and I want each of you to give me the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't varnish this. Just shoot from the hip. That comes to mind when I say these names. All right, ready to roll. And we'll go kind of like a snake draft. We'll go Tyler Jake, then Jake Tyler, then Tyler Jake, so no one gets an advantage. All right, PJ Fleck.
Meh.
Little man syndrome. I'm going to say that every time.
No, it's great. It's great. Jim Harbaugh.
It's me first? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Snake draft.
Cheater.
Thank you. Somebody.
Yeah, I would agree. It's really hard not to think that he had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. Ooh,
This varnishing of a cheating program that has clearly benefited in a win-loss on the field way from unequivocal cheating. Seeing that team try and portray itself as a upstart Rudy-like victim has been just disgusting.
Yeah.
And I can say this because it's my show. Fuck Michigan. Anyway, let's move on.
There's no way that this dude comes in with all of this knowledge of other teams' game plans. You're like, how does he know all this? He must be a really smart football guy. That you don't know that that's what's happening.
This people-pleasing moron, whatever, I forget his name, from Michigan, is standing next to OC and standing next to DC in the Buckeye game last year that they just magically happened to stomp him in. But we don't know who the guy is. Okay, well, construed most favorably towards Jim Harbaugh, what is wrong with you? Why do you have people on your sidelines talking to your coordinators? I mean, that's like, obviously it's ridiculous. He was giving game intelligence information. Michigan are a bunch of filthy, dirty, disgusting cheaters. And anyone who doesn't say that and tries to frame this as their victims in this, that is part of what is wrong with society right now. Let's go. Let's pull people up for what they are and just be honest. Can someone be honest about what we're seeing here? They're cheaters. Let's say it. I'm not afraid to say it. You guys, let's say it. 1, 2, 3, cheaters. Okay.
The word that I would say is accountability. Nobody takes accountability for things that they do wrong. That's unbelievable. So annoying, dude. That's something I'm teaching my 10-year-old right now is accountability.
Good. I would be embarrassed and humiliated.
Yeah.
Humiliated if this was Wisconsin's coaching scandal.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting there behind these guys going, Harbaugh for president. I'd be humiliated if Luke Fickell did this and got caught doing this. I'd be like, what is wrong with this? Is not the program that I know. He didn't do anything wrong. Yes, he absolutely fucking did.
I'd be hard pressed to not want that person fired, to be honest with you. If I was like a Michigan fan with any integrity, it would be hard to not want Harbaugh fired.
Yeah. It's Michigan against the world. Well, Michigan and the sign-stealing guy they're sending to 100 different venues to try and steal signals against the world. Let's move on. Luke Fickell.
Patience.
Leader.
That's good. I like that one. And finally, Brett Bielema.
Oh, should I say? I want to say it. I don't know if
you can say it.
Fat slob.
Honestly, the first word that came to mind. The first word that came to mind was buffet.
Dude,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's
because of you, Scary. It's because of you. Every time you say something about Brett Bielema, it's always Brett Bielema is going to destroy a buffet after this Illinois win or after this Illinois loss.
Dude.
Well, the great thing about Bielema is he's a very, very complex dichotomy where if he loses a big game, he goes and wrecks a buffet afterwards. But if he wins that game, he goes and wrecks a buffet afterwards. So this guy's an enigma. You can never figure it out.
Celebrating his wins or eating his feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. He does both. And look, you could say that making Bielema size jokes is beneath me, but I'm here to tell you that it's not. So. And unfortunately, it's definitely not beneath Bielema, which you don't want to be. Karma.
Poor Mrs. Bielema.
Oh God. Hey, he blocks me. You know he blocks me on Twitter?
I can't say it surprises me though.
Yeah, it's not just the son he blocks. He blocks me on Twitter as well. So anyway, we are I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. I was rooting for him.
I know that Brett Bielema has Twitter.
He does have Twitter, and he you know, honestly, God, and as I learned this by interviewing me and my wife a few weeks ago, we get along okay. The Barry Alvarez and Bielema are okay now. They buried the hatchet, so it's fine. He's really not a villain like PJ Fleck is, or like Jim Harbaugh is. Harbaugh's my number one villain.
Yeah,
knocking PJ Fleck off the top.
I think PJ Fleck wants to be a villain, Like that's why he acts the way he does, and he wears sunglasses inside, and he sleeps with the axe. He's not a villain. He's not good enough to be a villain.
Yeah, he's not. He sleeps with the axe, and then his wife is like, "Do you need me?" He's like,
For real, dude.
Yeah, poor Mrs. Black too.
Third wheel to PJ and the Paul Bunyan axe. Didn't see that.
Awesome.
Didn't see that when they're writing their vows.
It'd be hilarious for the Badgers to win against Minnesota, get the axe back, and like wipe it off with antibacterial wipes before they touch it.
Man.
No, it is absolutely going to be clean. It's going to be steam cleaned. I don't trust antibacterial wipes because they'll kill viruses. So you have to just go with the heat. So it's going to be put in a heat thing like they use at hospitals to sterilize things.
Oh shit.
Anyway, it's fine. Well, hey guys, Jake, Tyler, thank you for jumping on to this. This was a tough one to do, but it's good to have some insight of some fellow optimists. Boy, and if we are the optimists, I don't want to see the people who are the pessimists. But it's okay. This program is in good hands, and I think we're going to look back on this as just a hiccup in the road. But thanks for jumping on, and hope to see you guys soon.
Yeah, talk soon.